audio tracks separate with Audacity, but
yeah. Okay, yeah, I was gonna say I can use it if you want me to.
Yeah, I don't mind recording in the background just to have it in case.
Yeah. Okay, let's do it real quick then.
All right, yeah, let me hold on a second.
My daughter's been falling asleep to Frozen songs, so like I've got a song stuck in my head from Frozen right now. Like, show yourself, I'm ready and waiting. Yeah.
It's going to be our intro for the week.
Yeah.
There you go.
No. Test. Why is it not doing very good? Test. It's really low.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm getting good enough over here too.
Ah, Jesus.
All right.
Test. No, it's not recording this stupid. There we go. Test. There we go. All right. You guys all ready?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Alrighty. Let me get this down here. All right. 1, 2, 3, go. Testing. All right. Looks good. I gotta get that damn song out of my head. You guys are gonna be like talking. I'm gonna be over here singing Elsa songs, and well, we're good, man. All right, guys, welcome in. This is Devy Manual, episode 38, where we talk about everything from college to NFL to rookies. And right now, where everybody's focusing on the rookies, everybody's excited about the rookies. We got some news, a lot of news to cover here in our first segment. But first up, let me introduce my co-host, Mr. Joseph Namor. Joseph, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing good, Dwight. How are you?
I'm doing really, really good, man. Got a little bit of snow up here. How are you guys doing over there?
We're all right. I just came back from a short vacation, so getting used to the cold again. Up in New Hampshire, so we get snow and cold weather all the time. So it was nice to get out of that for just a week or so.
Right, I hear you there, man. Like, we have not gotten hardly anything in Michigan this year. I think maybe 3 inches total, which going into the end of almost February, that's crazy for us. Usually by this point, we've had a couple feet. So it's been a pretty lame winter. I'm not complaining, but some people are. People like to snowmobile and crap like that. So I like to stay inside when it's cold. So I'm not one of those.
Yeah, you won't catch me complaining. I mean, it's been a pretty light winter for us too, but I mean, generally speaking, we usually get slammed starting in December. So it's been pretty good, all things considered. But yeah, it's I'd rather be in the warm weather. I'll say that.
Oh yeah. All right. This week we have a special guest. Guy, I've talked to you before, haven't I, Skip? I think I have. Like, I swear I have.
Well, I know we've talked. I don't know if we've actually done a podcast together, or maybe we were both guests on a mock draft. I don't know. But
I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways, Skip Newton, who is the host of the Devy Happy Hour over there, he took over for me. He stole it from me. No, I'm just kidding. No, he definitely took the reins up, and you guys are doing phenomenal work over there. So, Skip, how you doing, man?
Doing really good. Listening to you guys talk about the weather there. We're kind of the same way here in Minnesota, where we got some snow early, and then it got nice and melted, and it was still warm enough where we're looking outside. It's like, okay, our grass is green, and it's early December. This is weird, and got a little break myself from the cold weather. I've my wife's family lives down in Texas, so spent a week down there for Christmas. But now we're getting back into the flow of things here. But man, it's always nice when the NFL playoffs get you through January, and then as soon as the Super Bowl's done, it's like, okay, now I'm ready for winter to be over. Let's just get to spring.
I wish it worked that way, man. Usually, once football's over, then we get dumped on for another month, and we're reminded of how long winter actually is. So
Exactly.
it sucks. All right. So speaking of the winter and things we have going on the college landscape, there's quite a bit of news this week. We're getting fired up for the Senior Bowl, and the other day they announced there will be no traditional combine this year, which totally sucks. I read I have it wrote down here or copied. There's no in-person workouts, no in-person interviews. The drills will be handled at the college pro days. They will try to have, I think they're going to try to have actual more NFL staff at the pro days to make it so it's not, quite as loose as the pro days normally are, to hopefully, have a little bit of uniformity in times, things like that. But it's probably not going to be very good. Media availability for team coaches, staff, and drafts will all be virtual. So, yeah, crazy, man. So that just ultimately makes the Senior Bowl even more important. So I don't know. We'll talk about this. A lot of these prospects and these running backs, the wide receivers, though, I think are really gonna be hurt the most by this not having a combine. You guys think that way too, or?
Yeah. So I mean, for me, I'm curious to see what testing looks like. I mean, typically, I enjoy watching the combine because I'm a complete degenerate, but I usually don't weigh the combine very heavily in my process. Typically, I use it as a barometer to measure against what I've seen on film. So if a player runs a 4.3, but doesn't look like he's that fast on film or can't separate deep, then I basically use it as a check to go back and see if there was something I missed while I was watching tape. But there's always guys throughout the process that you see rise after they test really well or test really poorly and they fall. So it'll be interesting not having the combine as that sort of benchmark that we are able to measure against every year. I know we see pro day numbers each and every year, and the pro day numbers are greatly inflated. Like you'll see a 40. Typically, I think the adjustment that we make to level set a pro day 40 against a combine 40 is like 0.07 seconds. Sometimes it's even more drastic than that. So it'll be interesting to see the impact on this. But I think one of the things that we will see is some of these players with checkered medical histories that aren't able to get their medical checks done by every team at the combine and have those medicals available to all teams. I know the teams will do their due diligence and stuff and make sure that they have their backgrounds prepared on everything. But I'm just worried about for those players that may have had a tumultuous college career that not having the combine experience may hurt them.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I hadn't even thought about that. I think I did read something about, they're going to address the whole medical concern, but that's a good one. I think I'm wondering the guys that chose to opt out and not take place in the goofy college season that we had, are they going to be hurt by not having a combine? Because, maybe that was their one chance to kind of get in front of these people in person and show them, hey, I'm still here, great athlete, et cetera, et cetera. And is that something that now, maybe hindsight, they're like, God, maybe I should have played, who knows? But, they've been preparing for this time, for the whole season. And now it's kind of taken away from them. I'm sure they'll still test well, with whatever they come up at the pro days, but that's something that kind of popped into my head right away.
Right. A guy like Sage Surratt, it would have been nice to see him do the drills, see what his agility is like, things like that, Yeah. So yeah, like Joseph said, it's not for me. It's kind of just one part of the equation, but it also helps separate, some of the guys, the lower level guys. You see what kind of athletes they are. So yeah, it definitely sucks. I usually do watch all of it. I've even gone down to Indianapolis a couple times and not even went to the actual combine just to kind of hang out there in the whole atmosphere. So it's definitely going to miss it this year. But I think that makes the Senior Bowl even more important. I mean, because now these guys will get those drills that week of practice, that week of, being around the scouts, the staffs, so Senior Bowl is even more important this year. I mean, it's really the only bowl game this year as well. as far as the like all-star bowls, whatever you want to call it. I'm not sure exactly. Talent bowls, I don't know, whatever you want to call that. So, real quick though, we'll go through this list. Skip, of these quarterbacks, were you really excited to watch? We got Kellen Mond, Sam Ellinger, Ian Book, Kyle Trask, Felipe Franks, Jamie Newman, and then also Mac Jones will be there, but I think he said he's not going to play. Is that right, or was it?
Yeah, I think that's what I heard as well.
Right. So
the guy I would love to see play quite a bit would be Jamie Newman, hopefully, because again, he opted out of the season. So I think that's the one that a lot of us are looking forward to. I mean, we've seen quite a bit from the other guys on the list. So Newman is one I'd like to see get in there. How does he look having not played for a while? He would be the quarterback that I'm focusing on the most. But of course, you want to watch all of them. Hopefully, a guy like Kyle Trask can show better than he did in the bowl game, because that was a disastrous performance. He had lost a lot of his favorite targets, of course. So he's another one that hopefully he can bounce back and show better, maybe improve his whatever draft stock he might have lost with that bowl game appearance.
All right, and then these running backs too. There's a pretty good group here. What do you think of these guys, Joseph? Are these like Ramondre Stevenson, who's come on toward the end of the year, Demetric Felton, Trey Sermon, which I don't know if he'll even play with the injury. I haven't even heard what have they said what the injury was during the bowl game? During the BCS title game. I actually have not seen anything about it.
I don't know if I've seen anything either. I haven't really been too active on Twitter the last week or so I may have missed something, but I mean, he left after the first play, and didn't see him since. And I haven't seen anything. I don't know if Skip, you saw anything.
I haven't either. I remember just seeing it live and wondering if it was a collarbone, because that's kind of what they were talking about. But I don't know if that's been confirmed or not.
Right. So other than that, we have Michael Carter, Larry Roundtree, Kylan Hill, Chris Evans, Elijah Mitchell, Khalil Herbert. Who do you think stands to make some money off the Senior Bowl in that group there, Joseph?
So, I mean, this is an exciting group for me. I like a lot of these players. I think a couple of the names that stand out, Khalil Herbert is a player that I think could make some money here. I think Michael Carter is pretty well known at this point. I expect him to be either a late day 2 or early day 3 guy. Trey Sermon should probably fall in the same bucket. I think Ramondre Stevenson and Khalil Herbert are the two guys I am watching here. And Kylan Hill as well, since he really only played a couple games this season and then opted out for the rest of the year. Hill is a guy that I was a lot more intrigued in before the season. I don't really know why I sort of fell out of love with him. I think he's a player that can do everything at a adequate level, but doesn't really stand out in any particular area. And one of the things that we had seen from him prior to this year was an adequate ability to rush between the tackles, but hadn't really demonstrated much receiving ability. And then with Mike Leach coming to town this year, we expected him to inherit a lot of the Max Borghi type targets where you get peppered with screens and stuff behind the line of scrimmage where you don't really necessarily need to separate on your own, and you're just schemed targets due to the nature of the passing game. And we saw Kylan Hill do a pretty good job demonstrating just capable chops in the receiving game. So I'm excited to see if he plays, what he looks like, just because I think he's a player that has 3-down ability. I think he's probably more of the jag territory than anything else, but I think he's a player that I'm at least sort of intrigued by. Stevenson, I'm excited to watch play outside of the Oklahoma system. A bigger back with very quick feet and good power, receiving chops as well. So excited to see him. And Herbert's just an exciting player. I mean, Virginia Tech is not a program that a lot of people watch week in and week out unless they're fans of that team. So I think seeing him on this stage could be helpful. And just the last name I wanted to touch on quickly, Demetric Felton, undersized scat back type player with electric playmaking ability. Just curious to see how he's utilized in this game if he gets to play any decent amount.
Right, he's been getting some buzz lately too. I wasn't overly impressed at college with him, but he seems to be kind of like one of those sexy names, sexy sleeper names that people keep throwing around. Herbert definitely started off this year crazy, and I was looking forward to watching him play as well. So, yeah, I like that a lot. And we'll go with these wide receivers pretty quick. A lot of these we'll cover on the wide receiver segment, but we got. Is there any dark horse names on the wide receiver squad that you like, Skip? We got. I'm not even going to try the guy from Notre Dame, Ben Warnick, I guess. Racy McMath, Des Fitzpatrick, Marquez Stevenson, Dwayne Eskridge, Austin Watkins from UAB, good sleeper name, Josh Palmer, Cade Johnson from South Dakota State's getting some steam, Shai Smith, Tylan Wallace, Nico Collins, Kadarius Toney, Trevin Grimes, Amari Rogers, Frank Darby, also getting a lot of buzz, and Cornell Powell. So who do you like there to that who we're already talking about kind of the rest of the episode? Are there some names here that think could really stand out this week or next week at the Senior Bowl and make themselves some money?
Yeah, the couple of guys that really stand out to me would be Dwayne Eskridge. I keep hearing a lot about him, and it's just like, okay, let's focus on him in this game. Hopefully get to see a lot of him. And then Austin Watkins Jr. is another one that I want to see more of. I think he has a chance to move up people's boards. My co-host on Devy Happy Hour, Matt, is really starting to fall in love with the other Clemson wide receiver, Cornell Powell, the last guy there on the list. So he thinks that he's the guy from Clemson to look at and not Amari Rogers. So I'm interested to watch more of him. Of course, covering the ACC like I do for NFL Draft Bible, I watch quite a bit of Clemson. But and then again, the last guy on there is another one. Going back to the same concept of a guy that hasn't played, Nico Collins. Who opted out at Michigan. I love his physical traits and his attributes there. So would just like to see him play. I mean, I don't blame him for opting out. He doesn't have a great quarterback and a great system there, but he's one that I think if he can show well and test well and look good in the drills and stuff, he could really move up and be a surprise, for sure, a day 2 pick.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely some tantalizing names here and some guys that have a lot to prove, which is cool. Like all these guys. Do we have any of them in our top 12? Tylan Wallace. That's Kadarius Toney, kind of right.
Tony's probably right at the back end of mine.
Right, and so like a lot of these guys have a great opportunity here. Then as far as tight ends, Tony Poljan, I don't know. I suck at this. Why? Anyway, Kenny Yeboah, who had a couple really big games for Ole Miss this year. Trey McKitty from Georgia. I think he's a former 5-star, I believe, or former 4. Really highly regarded at one point. Noah Gray from Duke, Quentin Morris, Bowling Green, SMU's Kylan Granson, and Boston College's Hunter Long. I spent a lot of names on these tight ends. Is there anybody that sticks out there for either of you guys?
Hunter Long's the big one for me. I think he could probably contend for tight end 4 in this class behind the big 3 names that everyone knows. Those guys being Kyle Pitts, Pat Fryermuth, and Brevin Jordan. I think Hunter Long is right in the conversation along with guys like Jake Ferguson and a bunch of other people for tight end 4 in this class. And I think Hunter Long could make himself a good amount of money at this game. I mean, I would say he has somewhat prototypical size. He's a decent blocker. He's good hands, decent speed. So, I mean, he basically fits the prototype of what you're looking for in a complete tight end at the next level. So Hunter Long is a guy that interests me quite a bit. The other 2 names on this roster that interest me are Kenny Yeboah, like you mentioned, Dwight, and Kylan Granson. Granson's more of a receiving tight end from what I've seen. Haven't studied him too much in depth yet, but I'm intrigued by his receiving ability as a kind of a move tight end at the next level. And Yeboah, similar to how I view Granson, need to do more tape study on him. But I'm intrigued by his athleticism and his. Every time I watched Ole Miss, I feel like he was getting open down the seam for a long gain, whether it was being schemed into open space or using his athleticism to create space for himself. So those are the 3 guys out of this group that I'm interested to watch.
Yeah, Skip, you got anything?
Yeah, I agree completely on Hunter Long. I think he is the tight end 4, at least right now. So he's kind of the favorite for that place. So he could, move up some people's lists in a pretty deep tight end class. And I like Granson's athleticism as well. The other one at Bowling Green, Quentin Morris, I'm intrigued by him. I need to see more of him. So gonna hopefully take this opportunity to check him out and just see, can he move up my board and see if he might make himself relevant.
All right. All right. And the other big news of the week before we we were talking about a show sheet, Joseph said we need to talk about Chris Olave. And I literally have Chris Olave WTF. Like that was kind of such a huge surprise to everybody, I think. So Joseph, lead us off on the Olave talk. What do you think he made a good choice?
I don't want to get on the mic and talk poorly about other people and their professional decisions. I think the intention here is to try and mimic what Devontae Smith did in his senior year, where he goes back to school. He's probably a fringe late day 1, early day 2 pick, goes back to school, dominates his competition, rises up the board, and is seen near the top of the next year's class. I think that's what Olave is trying to do here. I just have a lot of questions because I'm not sure he's the best receiver on his own team. He's going to have a big downgrade in quarterback play, as much as I like Stroud and the rest of the guys that they have coming in. They're not Justin Fields. We've talked on this show about how much we like Justin Fields. He's probably the QB2 in this class. I feel strongly about that. I know other people have Zach Wilson up there. But regardless, I don't think CJ Stroud is coming into Ohio State this year and is going to be the best or second best quarterback in college football. So if you factor in he's going to be another year older. So he's entering, instead of being a 21-year-old rookie, he's going to be a 22-year-old rookie. He's going to have probably a worse quarterback situation, and he's still probably not going to stand out that much above his own teammate and Garrett Wilson. I don't really get it. I think I understand where he's trying to get to with this move. I just don't really think it's a good decision. And I think at best, he's probably still wide receiver 4 at best next year, because you have George Pickens, you have his own teammate Garrett Wilson, David Bell's up there. Treylon Burks is an ascending name that I really like. John Mechie will be the wide receiver 1 for Alabama. So I'm not a huge Mechie guy, but I think he will rise some. And I don't see Olave getting that much higher. And what does he get to? The middle of the first round next year by going back and having a strong season? I wish him the best. I really like him as a player. I'm not sure I understand the reasoning here.
Right. I wonder if he just didn't get a good grade. I mean, I kind of had trouble placing him in this class. I had him kind of right in the middle. So maybe he got a, what do they say, day 1, day 2, or undrafted grade. So maybe he didn't get one of those. It definitely seemed puzzling. I think everybody kind of thought he was gone. Maybe he wants to go back next year and finish second again in lose another BCS title game. Ohio State's good at that. Anyway, I always gotta get my Ohio State jabs in. Skip, what do you think about? Did he kind of on the same boat?
A lot of the guys that have decided to come back, I thought made pretty good decisions. There was a couple that I questioned, like Zamir White. I didn't think he made a good decision going back to school. I thought, coming off of 2 knee injuries and then, showing out that, okay, hey, I look pretty good. I'm recovered. I think he should have absolutely gone pro, just because who knows what can happen with another season at college. It's like, go get your money, dude. But with Olave, this is one that I question as well. It felt like he had such a good season, and it felt like he finished strong and on a high note, and that, things were trending in the right direction. He was showing well in big games, and it just seemed, maybe it's just the way I was looking at him, because I felt like he was moving up my board, because the more I watched him, the more I loved him. And so I felt like, man, this guy, he's kind of the moving up. He's definitely establishing himself, maybe, not top 5, but he's in that next fairly large group of wide receivers, he could easily be a second round pick, maybe fall the third round, but man, it seemed like a sure thing. And, second round is a good draft stock. And I don't like Joe said, I don't know how much he's really going to improve his position by going back. I mean, there's still some good players there, and you never know who's going to step up. And like you said, they've got just a ridiculous amount of young talent at wide receiver. And, those guys aren't going to sit there and play second fiddle for long. I mean, they're going to get the ball more. So yeah, I didn't particularly like this decision myself.
All right. All right, guys.
Yeah, and I think just real quick before we move on, I think one of the downstream impacts we'll see from this is it's just going to delay the emergence of Jackson Smith and Jigba, Julian Fleming. We may see, I expected G. Scott Jr. to emerge. I think he may look to transfer now. I don't know if he necessarily will or he won't, but it's just unfortunate that they have all of these 5 stars coming in, year out, and very excited to watch a lot of these guys play and emerge and put up stats, and they're probably just all going to have to wait another year. So too bad.
Right. Definitely kind of an odd decision. All right, we'll get into this group of 2021 wide receivers. We're going to go through them kind of quick. I'm going to kind of do some different things here. Joseph and I have both of our rankings here, so we're going to kind of Skip's going to be our litmus board. I'm going to bounce stuff off of you. Let us know where we're wrong, where which of us. I'm going to take a tally and see. You have to tell each of us which one's right, and at the end, the winner gets. I don't know. I'm just kidding. Don't do that. You're like, I don't want to get in the middle of this.
Yeah. What did I get myself into here?
All right. Both of us have Jamar Chase and Devontae Smith as 1 and 2. So, Skip, do you see any scenario where Jamar Chase is not the number 1 in this class? Like, is there any detractment to his game? Well,
I'm hearing more and more from people that sometimes he does struggle to get off the line, and he's not as efficient at beating people on that press coverage. Once he gets down the field, he's great at contested catches. He's great in space. When he does have space, he knows what to do with it afterwards. I mean, he's fantastic after the catch. So there's a lot to love about Jamar Chase. I think that's the one thing that I've heard. I'd like to see, kind of go back to the film and look at that and see if I can spot what I'm hearing other people say. But he's my wide receiver 1. So I don't know how you rank these other guys ahead of him unless it's just recency bias and that he took the year off. So out of sight, out of mind, and you forget just how absolutely dominating this guy was a year ago. And as awesome as Devonta Smith was, I still have these guys 1-2 like you guys have them. I'm the same place.
Right, I've heard the same thing recently that some scouts have said that cornerbacks are not afraid to get their hands on him off the line, which is crazy because even if they do, he's so physical and strong that the separation isn't as much of an issue with him because of how strong he is and his body positioning, things like that. I mean, there's ways to mask over separation issues, so it'd be something to watch. And I definitely would have liked to see him, this year at the combine, and everybody that can kind of remember how much of a physical beast this kid is.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what he did with his year off. I'm sure he spent a lot of time working on his speed and the stuff that he expected to be able to show off at the combine. But I wonder if he worked with like a wide receiver or a footwork coach to try and work on some of his release package, ways to beat press off the line. Because I think, Skip, like you mentioned, I think it was Eric Crocker on Twitter that did a Zoom session where he reviewed some of Chase's film, and that was really the main takeaway that he saw, was that Chase occasionally struggled to separate from that contact at the line of scrimmage, and that he occasionally let contact affect him throughout his route too often. I didn't necessarily see that, but I am not an expert film watcher. So it's something that I want to go back and take a look at. But I wonder, having opted out of the season, if he spent some time working on developing some of those more technical skills.
Yeah, we certainly hope that's what he did, and hopefully he wasn't sitting around playing the PlayStation 5 all year. All right, number 2 then. We'll get to number 2. And this is another, like, I'm curious. I keep seeing all these guys, and I don't know if it's just hot take, clickbait type thing, but I've seen Devonta Smith as far down as 10, like on some people's boards, and I just don't freaking get it. I don't know if it's the size or like I really just don't get it, because what I see, my notes are, he does damage at all levels of the field. He's incredibly dangerous with the ball in his hands. He's precise. He's, he sets up moves with hips, head fakes. His footwork is crazy. Like, he just does so many things so well that he creates separation all over, like every level of the field, all over. Like, if you watch his all 22, it's crazy. Like, the guy is nearly almost always open. And I think he'll overcome the size issues, that everybody likes to bring up. The 6'1", 175 pounds, and he does look pretty wiry on the field when you watch him, but he doesn't take big hits either because he's so freaking shifty. So I don't know. Is that, Skip? Are you what do you see when you see Devonta? Is that kind of where you're at as well, or?
Yeah, I've got him up there. I mean, he is a stud, and I don't know what more this guy has to do to prove people wrong, other than, of course, going into the NFL and dominating. But the one thing I've heard, a couple times, people talking about the late breakout, and I'm always confused by that. It's like, hey, he had a great junior year. I mean, he had 1,200 yards and 14 touchdowns, and by the way, a lot of talent at Alabama at wide receiver. I mean, they're going to have 4 guys that could be, first round picks. It's like there's a phenomenal amount of talent, and he was arguably the best of them last year, and he was definitely the best of them this year. I think the sky's the limit for this kid, and I love him. So having him down at 10, that has to be clickbait. I don't know. I mean, I get the BMI argument and the historical significance of that, but that doesn't mean that it's a sure thing. I mean, the game's changing, athletes are changing, and I can't possibly put this guy any lower than, I mean, maybe 3, but that's, you're splitting hairs at this point. I mean, he's that good.
Right, because actually statistically he was the best receiver on their team last year, even with, Judy there and stuff. So, all right, now's where it gets dicey, though. Although we actually we have the same 3 guys. This is kind of what I consider my second tier. Is that kind of where you're at, Joseph, with these 3 guys, with Waddle, Rashad Bateman, and Rondale Moore?
Waddle is probably closer to my tier 1 than my tier 2. Waddle was my wide receiver 2 coming into the year. I had Smith at like 5 or 6. He's obviously risen a ton with what he did this season, having it be one of the most historic performances in college football history, honestly. Waddle, I mean, before Waddle got hurt, he was the wide receiver 1 on that team. And Smith had some good performances, but if you look at their game logs side by side, I think Waddle was the guy that had 100 yards and a touchdown in each of his first 4 games, breaks his ankle on the first snap of the Tennessee game on a kickoff return, and didn't see him again till the national championship game, where he was clearly not 100%, but showed a lot of heart gutting it out for his team. Waddle is a guy who is almost certain to get first-round draft capital, has electric playmaking ability with the ball in his hands, very good speed, and elite acceleration and deceleration. The deceleration piece is what really intrigues me from a route running standpoint, because that's everyone every year we get the looking for the next Tyreek Hill type player, and I think it's mostly a fool's errand. You're not going to get a guy with that sort of athleticism and those ball skills matched up in an Andy Reid scheme with the best quarterback in the sport. So I think the Tyreek Hill thing, he happened to fall into the best situation he could have. But what makes Tyreek Hill so special, I think, on top of the situation he's in, is the way he's able to decelerate. So he has world-class speed, and he can decelerate and stop on a dime and just create massive amounts of separation. And to me, Jalen Waddle has that more than probably anyone else in this class outside of Rondale Moore. And Waddle can threaten defenses deep. He can create yards after the catch in the short and intermediate areas. He has good hands. Really, the only concern to me outside of the ankle and making sure he's 100% is his age. He's going to be a 23-year-old rookie. which isn't something I really hold as a major red flag. It's more something to just be aware of, that he will be old coming in. It's not like Jamar Chase, who is going to be 21. So just something to be aware of. But Waddle to me is closer to the Chase and Smith tier than the guys underneath him for me.
Yeah, Skip, what do you got on those three?
I mean, I love all three. Of course, I love Bateman, my guy at the University of Minnesota, and Rondale Moore. People again are out of sight, out of mind. I mean, yeah, he came back and played, but not like he did his freshman season. But of these three, I gotta agree with Joe that I think Waddle is the one that is closest to tier one. And if anyone were to step up, in their rookie season and end up being, kind of a surprise wide receiver one, like, oh, he wasn't maybe taken first, but by the end of the season, I mean, wow, that's the guy you want more than the others. It wouldn't surprise me at all if it was Jalen Waddle. I mean, he is that athletic and that dynamic. I mean, he's not just fast, like we've seen with some of these other guys that they end up getting taken because they run a great 40 time, but they're they don't have maybe the other finer parts of playing wide receiver, but the route running and the like you said, the deceleration is a great observation. He has all that. I mean, he was a dynamic punt returner as well, which shows you a skill set that is not easy. I mean, that is something completely different than playing wide receiver. And it just shows you how quick that he makes decisions, changes direction, and then accelerates, and makes great plays, on special teams. And that's a trait that we like to see in wide receivers, because it shows that they can do pretty special things with the ball in their hands. And Waddle is that guy for me. So yeah, I've got him. He keeps moving up my board. I mean, I was not expecting him to play at all after that ankle injury. I thought it was really bad. So he probably shouldn't have been playing, but the fact that he was at least healthy enough to get out there and still look fast, even for clearly not being 100%, kind of sold me that, okay, that when this kid gets healthy, he is going to be dynamic. And I love him more and more.
You see a lot that he could potentially be the first wide receiver off the board. So just because of that, what you guys said, the speed, the way he cuts on a dime, the preciseness of his moves, and the burst in and out of the break, it's pretty ridiculous. So let me see of that group. Yeah, we mentioned Rondale Moore a little bit, and yeah, I don't know. It's so hard to get where the NFL is going to value him, with him not missing so much time the last couple of years. I don't know. It's, gosh, he's one of those. He's like the most perplexing guy in the draft, man. Like I just don't know what to do with him. I almost feel bad even having him right in my second tier just because of we haven't seen him. But then that first year that he had, with over 2,000 all-purpose yards and just how ridiculous he looked, you saw little flashes of it. You saw it against the Minnesota game when he did play. Although someone mentioned to me earlier that he didn't look as fast and as quick in that game, and I thought maybe a little bit. You saw maybe a little bit of hesitation, a little bit of timidness in the way he was playing. So maybe he's worried about being hurt at this point. So I don't know if you guys have anything on Rondale Moore. I just don't know what to do with him, man. I really don't.
Moore feels more landing spot dependent than a lot of other guys here. I think his freshman season, we saw what he could be. He's one of the most electric playmakers in this entire class. One of the most electric playmakers we've seen in some time, to be honest. It feels like Purdue manufactured a lot of touches for him, which is both a good and a bad thing. I think you want players to have touches manufactured for them, because that means the team recognizes that they are either a special talent or an elite athlete, or both. And he appears to be both. But you would like to see him win more frequently in more prototypical ways. And I think he's capable of doing that. We saw plenty of that his freshman season. The problem is we haven't really seen a ton of it since. And I mean, I do plenty of my own film work on all of these guys, but I do look at where mock drafts slot some of these players just to get some sort of pulse on how other analysts are seeing them, how the real NFL is going to view these guys. And Moore is the one that seems to be either a very late day one selection or a second round pick. And to me, I feel a lot more confident in Rashad Bateman in this tier than I do Rondale Moore. And I'm hopeful that Moore lands in a landing spot that will be open to using him in creative ways and showcasing his electric playmaking ability, because I do think he, in a class that isn't as loaded, he's for sure top 3 talent. And I feel bad having him down at 5, because in a normal class, I think I could have him at 1 or 2. But I have some questions, and I think he needs to be, I just have a little bit more questions with Moore than I would about any of the guys above him.
Yeah, definitely. That's kind of where I'm at. I very much just don't know what to do with him, because I mean, he was like the number 1 Devy asset like 2 years ago. Like he was, just the promise after his freshman season was so huge. So, speaking of Bateman, Skip, will go up to you since you're the Minnesota guy. Give us what you got on Rashad Bateman. What do you like about him? I think he's got the potential to be a wide receiver 1 right out the gate. So,
yeah, I agree. I think people saw this year and that really the Gophers struggled offensively. Tanner Morgan wasn't the same quarterback that he was a year ago. And, Bateman, he opted out. He had COVID, he had issues with that. Then he decided to come back and play. And the offense was really, really stagnant. And it was, basically, run the ball to Ibrahim, first down and second down. And if it got to third down, then we're going to throw the ball to Bateman on a cross. And he didn't seem to run as many of the routes that he ran the year before. In 2019, he was running deep routes. He was running crossing routes. I mean, it just seemed like he was more involved, and you saw the huge play potential that this guy has. I mean, he absolutely can beat people deep. He has the flair to make spectacular circus catches. I mean, great concentration, a couple of one-handed catches, under pressure and being defended well. And so I agree. I think he has absolutely wide receiver 1 upside, because I think he can develop into that player that can be used all over the place. And he's just a really complete wide receiver in kind of across the board. I mean, he might not be the elite athlete of a Jalen Waddle, but he's not slow either. I mean, he's definitely going to be fast enough, but I think he runs good enough routes, and he can develop that ability to catch the ball. Contested catches he's really good at as well. So, I'm a Gopher homer and fan, of course, but I think Rashad Bateman is for sure a late first round, early second round draft pick, and has that potential to be something special.
Right, I have the same notes. Like he's complete. Like he's very good all around. Not great at anything, but just very good all around. So I really like a lot of what he does. So knocking on the door of the next tier. Then this next tier is very, I think, landing spot dependent. A lot of these guys could. I mean, I think this next tier could go. I mean, I've got 6 to 12 here on our list. I swear it could go 15, 20 deep. Like there's so many guys in this, that if they land in the right situation with the right draft capital, they could really be, something special. So the first guy for both Joseph and I is Terrace Marshall. So Joseph, what do you like so much about Terrace Marshall?
Marshall is a guy that's probably closer to my tier 2 than the tier 3 with the rest of the guys that we'll get to in a minute. I mean, he was a former 5-star recruit who is a red zone maven, very good athlete, prototypical alpha size. I think had we not seen him share the field with Justin Jefferson, who's arguably the wide receiver 1 in Dynasty right now, and Jamar Chase, who's arguably the wide receiver 1 in this class, we would be viewing Marshall in a completely different light. And a couple things that we saw this year in the few games he played, I think he played 6 or 7 games prior to opting out. We saw him score like 10 touchdowns or so. And we saw really poor quarterback play from LSU, but no matter who was under center, they were targeting Marshall as that alpha, as that guy that could win against man and zone and press, and really look to him as the guy. And I think if there was anyone outside of the top 5 that we're looking as a potential alpha that you can get later in rookie drafts, and by later, I mean probably late first round, early second at the latest. He's still going to go early, but Terrace Marshall is closer to the earlier tiers of guys that we already mentioned than the guys below him for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree. We've been doing some mock drafts at NFL Draft Bible, and he is going in that tier with the 5 guys that we've already talked about. So it seems like you're not alone in that regard, Joe, that people are finding this guy to be absolutely good enough to move up, taken ahead of Rashad Bateman and at least a couple of them. So he's got everyone's attention for sure. And yeah, I mean, it was a crowded room, a year ago, and he still put up good numbers despite being the 3rd guy. And then, this year, like everything you pointed out, definitely subpar quarterback play, and he was the alpha receiver, and he played like it. I mean, to put up the stats that he did with 48 receptions in 7 games for 731 yards, averaged over 15 yards per catch, and the 10 scores, like you said, those are great numbers for just 7 games, again on a bad team. So yeah, I got to move him up. I've got him lower just because I'm always tinkering with my rankings, but he's the one guy that I would say is going to be consistently with the top 5, and then one of the next guys we'll probably talk about is another one that I'm moving up even more. But I'll let Dwight get into that.
I said the same thing about Terrace Marshall. I love his athletic ability. I think he's a little bit raw still, which is amazing because he's showing a lot. I love how smooth he plays. He just seems very smooth in everything he does. Like there's no freakishly weird, moves. He just seems very smooth and very difficult to cover. So I like him a lot. So, all right, this one is Joseph. I'll get to your number 7 because this is one that's probably I've seen anywhere from 5 to 15. Like Amon-Ra St. Brown just seems to be like nobody can really get a beat on where this guy is going to land. And I think landing spot will be critical for him. Draft capital will be critical for him. Are people going to be scared off by, not as much college production? I mean, he had a pretty decent year last year, but I think we expected bigger things for Amon-Ra. So, Joseph, why do you have him at 7, man?
I think he's able to separate at ease, and I think he's a good athlete. I mean, one of the things that I really hold in high regard when I'm evaluating the receiver position is the ability to separate. I don't care if it's with elite route running. I don't care if it's with, well, I somewhat care if it's with pure athleticism because you're not going to consistently win at the NFL level with that. But St. Brown seems to just always be open. And I mean, that's something that I covet in the receiver prospects that I look at. And for me, I mean, he played with some NFL caliber players. Like he played alongside Michael Pittman last year. Drake London's going to be an early pick. Tyler Vaughn's might make an NFL roster. I think he probably should. And St. Brown may have been, I mean, I would say Pittman is probably better, but I would think St. Brown is probably a 3rd round NFL pick. And I think he could create or sort of carve out a career for himself, sort of like a Tyler Boyd, where he's operating underneath sort of short intermediate routes, security blanket on 3rd downs, converting 1st downs, more of a PPR monster than a true alpha. I don't think that's his game at all, but that's sort of the comp that I see. He may be a little bit more athletic than Boyd, but that's why I like him. I think there are guys below him that with good draft capital could vault him, but that's why I have him at 7.
Oh, amazingly, Boyd is exactly the name I was going to bring up when talking about Amon-Ra St. Brown. I can't believe you said that. Yeah, he's that kind of guy where he he does everything really well. I mean, he runs really good routes and gets open. He makes contested catches. He always seems to be in a position for the quarterback to get him the ball, and he's got really good hands. Enough speed to get deep, but that he's not relying on that. Just a really complete, solid wide receiver, and I think in a way he's almost less dependent on landing spot because of that, because I think he could in theory just be that wide receiver 2 for almost anybody who drafts him. I mean, yeah, if you're looking for the alpha, the number 1, he's probably not that guy.
Right.
But he definitely could be a great number 2. And so many teams are going, even 3 wide receivers deep, throw out a team, Green Bay, for example. Everyone's talking about, oh, wouldn't it be great if they had a great, wide receiver 2 there? Amon-Ra St. Brown would, get the really good St. Brown, not the other guy, his older brother. And, he would fill in perfectly in a situation like that, I think, where he doesn't have to be the number 1. Or hell, I'll just go with my team, the Vikings. I mean, Adam Thielen's not getting any younger, and I would love to see them grab a guy like St. Brown to pair with Jefferson moving forward, and then Thielen can be their 3 and just kind of stick around for as long as he wants to play. So yeah, I like him a lot. I've got him in that grouping there, going from 6 to 10. He's right in the middle of that. If he somehow fell in the draft, I would have to rethink that. But otherwise, I think he's kind of set right in that spot.
Right. I mean, sorry, Dwight. I mean, just to me, real quick, he feels safe, and I think it gets into this could be a long conversation that we could have at another time, but I think it may make sense to rank or tier these guys in terms of projection, like guys you could see as an alpha that are X receivers, and guys that are more possession receivers that are safe and less landing spot dependent. Because I really think rankings are subjective, honestly. It depends on whatever factors you view as valuable and important. But I mean, viewing someone like St. Brown, who both Skip and I think is a safe prospect, but may not have the upside as some guys that are probably ranked below him. It's a rabbit hole that we could get down some other time about how people rank and view players. But like you said, I mean, he seems like a safe player that doesn't really need a good landing spot to have a similar career arc or path to fantasy relevance, like a lot of other guys that we have either talked about or will talk about.
Right. I'll flip over to my number 7, who is, I think the more I watch of him, he's becoming I think he might be my guy this year. That's Elijah Moore from Ole Miss. He's going to be a slot guy. I don't think his skill set is going to be like the wide receiver 2, on the outside. But what I love about him is I love his athleticism, the agility after the catch. I think he's crazy dangerous. He creates separation at right off the line, quick. He's really good working the middle, the second level of the field there. He's just incredibly elusive, like great footwork. He's just a guy I really, really loved watching. Like I turned on, trying to watch Matt Corral this year because I thought he was going to be something better. And I was like, man, Corral would be nothing if it wasn't for Moore. Like, good Lord. Like Moore just put up, let me see here. I know he started off, he kind of tailed a little toward the end of the year, but he ended up with 1,100, almost 1,200 yards with 8 touchdowns. And they get him involved in the rushing game as well. So he's a guy that I think he's going to be an electric slot receiver. I love Elijah Moore, and unfortunately he's starting to get a little traction, which sucks. I wanted to stay quiet, but nothing stays quiet in this realm anymore, does it? Like you can't have sleeper guys anymore, like Dwayne Eskridge and stuff like that. People talk about him, and people like, shh, damn it, that's mine. So anyways, all right. I don't know if you guys got anything on Elijah Moore. Skip, you got anything or?
Just that he's moving up my list as well. I hadn't watched a lot of him, but you like you said, you keep hearing the buzz. It's like, all right, I better pay more attention here. And it became clear. It's like, wow, this guy is a complete wide receiver too. I mean, I agree with your assessment. I think the slot is where he's gonna work great out of, and he's a really good route runner. And obviously, he's got good hands. I mean, catches almost 11 passes per game. I mean, that's just absurd production. So he was one where I'll admit, early in the season, I wasn't that high on him, wasn't even really on my radar. But then, more and more people started talking about him. I was like, all right, I gotta see what these people are talking about. And I'm becoming more convinced that, yep, this guy absolutely has a future in the NFL.
All right, Joseph, we both have. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to chime in on Moore quickly. I mean, I like Moore as well. Sort of talking out of both sides of my mouth here, but I don't know how high I'm going to have players I feel are slot only options. And I say this as someone that has Rondale Moore at 5. So I don't know. I don't really know exactly what I'm trying to say here. I like Moore for the same reasons you mentioned. I think he's a dynamic player with good hands who absolutely dominated targets on a poor Ole Miss team. My one concern is that if he doesn't get the draft capital that a guy like Rondale will have, and he's slot only, even if he's dynamic, what does that get you in terms of fantasy production at the next level? When you look at the wide receiver landscape in the NFL, and there are so many players that are fantasy relevant. So I like Moore. The reason I have him a little bit lower than you is because the guys I have above him, I think, could develop into not necessarily alphas, but are more likely to gain more prominent roles at the next level.
I could just see him carving like a Jarvis Landry type role. I think he could easily do that with that type of production. And nobody likes Jarvis Landry. I do. But anyway. All right, we both have Seth Williams at number 8, which is kind of cool. Seth Williams is a guy I've been crazy high on for a really long time. And unfortunately, he's just been stuck with one of the worst college quarterbacks in history, in my opinion. But Joseph, what do you see that puts Seth at number 8 for you?
So, I mean, in a normal class, he could be a lot higher. Prototypical size, it's like 6'3", 210 plus, early breakout. So at times he flashes like T. Higgins vibes. I think he wins in the same ways. For me, the problem is he's super inconsistent on tape, and I don't know whether that's because Bo Nix sucks or if it's because he just plays with inconsistent effort. So Williams is a guy I like a lot, because I think he could develop into a wide receiver 1 at the NFL level, and I would not be shocked at all if that's what ends up happening. I just have some concerns about the consistency in his play.
Yeah, I think draft capital is going to be king with him. If he falls 5th, 6th round, I don't think he's ever going to be able to break through that, that ceiling there that he could possibly have. So another guy I think that falls in that same range, though, is Tylan Wallace. So I don't know, Skip, what do you think of Tylan?
I like Tylan Wallace. I think he kind of falls into that same category of these guys that are just good all around wide receivers. And, he had a great season a couple of years ago, and then he got an injury shortened one. But, I think people forget just how awesome he was with almost 1,500 yards and 12 touchdowns. So I'm higher on Tylan than maybe Seth Williams. I kind of put him up in that Amon-Ra St. Brown, Elijah Moore area. But, we're definitely in this part of the discussion, this grouping of wide receivers where draft position and landing spot are so crucial. It's really going to change where I view these guys as far as, in non-Devy leagues, when I'm doing my rookie drafts, I gotta remember that matters. I mean, if there's a guy that I'm not as high on and all of a sudden he moves up and gets taken into the 3rd round to a team that, clearly likes him. And, the name that keeps popping into my head is Chase Claypool. I was not high on him going into this year. And, hey, I was wrong. I mean, I should have paid more attention to that draft stock. And I think this is the kind of these guys that we're talking about are all there. I mean, I think if he can get, in anywhere in day 2, that's a good sign for Wallace and a lot of these guys, and Seth Williams as well. So I think he's got the opportunity to be really good. It's just a matter of getting that draft capital.
And I was honestly kind of surprised that he was only 6 foot 190. I feel like he plays a lot bigger than that, like when you watch him on tape. So he's definitely a guy I like a lot. Another guy I like a lot, where we're getting down to the bottom of our 12 here, but both of us have Diami Brown from North Carolina in the same range. So what I just sorry. My notes on Diami is I think he's a good athletic receiver. His hands sometimes are a little bit of a detriment, but I like his long speed, body control. He high points balls well. He extends away from his body when catching. He doesn't let balls get in on him like that. He needs to work on his route running, his physicality a little bit, so he's a little bit raw in those areas, but you see a lot of the big play potential. I mean, Sam Howell looked to him every time he needed a big play, and more times than not, he came up with it. So I really like Diami Brown a lot as a guy that, probably another guy who's going to draft capital. Does the NFL see him the way I see him? Like I love watching him and hopeful for him in the NFL. So what do you got on him, Joseph?
Not a whole lot that you haven't already touched on. I think Dane Brugler with The Athletic is someone that's pretty locked in with how the NFL views some of these prospects. And I think Brown is a guy that I've seen in mocks as low as like the 6th round. But Dane plugged him into his 2nd round to a pretty strong landing spot. I don't know if it was the Titans or the Packers, but it was a place that needed a good wide receiver too. And I think if he gets that sort of draft capital, it's absolutely wheels up for him because he's a dynamic player with good yet inconsistent ball skills. But I think he just threatens defenses at all levels of the field, and he's a player I'm very excited about, pending draft capital.
Right. All right, and then like kind of a sexy name, Kadarius Toney was, it seems like he made himself a lot of money this year as well, although you and I have him down pretty low. So I'm curious, Skip, what do you think of Mr. Toney from Florida there?
I'm definitely in that wait and see category on Toney. I mean, he does make some good plays, some big plays, and he absolutely looked good this season. I'm not really sure if his game's going to translate into the NFL. I mean, he's shifty, but is he strong enough? He's not, not the biggest guy. So I guess kind of in that I need to do more research on Toney, watch more film and see, am I missing something or is my initial assessment there? And obviously I got plenty of time to do that, but I'm interested to hear, why do you guys like him, more than some of the other, dynamic playmakers, even guys that aren't even on the list, guys like, Tutu Atwell, for example, someone like that, who's just a freak athlete.
Yeah, I think Toney's another one of those guys that could just be a lot better in the NFL than for fantasy. Like, someone will, if they find the right role for him there, that he could be, like you said, the strength, the functional strength, the play strength is my biggest concern with him. And that a team might get too cute, too gadgety with him. Like, I don't know. Sometimes that turns me off. Like, I've just been burned by it too many times in fantasy. So it's kind of where I'm at. So you have Tutu on your list, though, Joseph. What do you like him, or you think he's got a role in the NFL? Or
yeah, I mean, this class is so much fun because I have Atwell as my 15th ranked receiver, and I think in a normal year where you don't have the high end players that this class has, or the depth that this class has, you could see him a lot higher up on this list. But I mean, he's a player that in the Marquise Hollywood Brown archetype, a smaller, skinny receiver with tremendous speed that relies on that speed sometimes to create separation, which is a bit of a concern. He is slight. He can get affected by contact, but man, he is dynamic. And I mean, at the very least, he can serve as a team's deep threat. I mean, this year we saw players like Darnell Mooney create roles for themselves at the NFL level and perhaps exceed expectations. And I think Atwell is a better player than Mooney. So I think if he gets on a team that needs a field stretcher that can also run some intermediate routes with some level of technique, like I think Atwell can. Like Tutu is a guy that's probably going to I know there's no combine, but I think he ran in the low 4.3s the last time he ran a 40. And he can create separation pretty much at ease, even though he's not the most technically sound route runner. So he's not a guy that can beat press regularly, but you put him in the slot and you give him free releases. And I think he's a dynamic player for your offense. So Tutu's a guy I like. Curious about landing spot and draft capital and all that stuff. And I think that will affect where I ultimately rank him. But he's a guy that I think is very talented and am certainly intrigued by.
Yep. All right. Last name we'll go deep on is kind of another guy, that fits in that same vein almost. It's Tamarian Terry from Florida State. So Skip, I'm kind of curious where you have him on because he's like an absolute do not draft for me. Like I'm scared of his hands. Like yeah.
That is a valid concern, and for me, it is the only one. I'm probably higher on Tamarian Terry than anybody else. I absolutely fell in love with this guy last year, and so this year was a pretty disappointing year for Terry. But the speed size combination, I mean, 6'4", I think he was 205 last year, and then he bulked up to 220.
Yep.
I got really excited about that. I mean, I'm like, oh man, because this kid is just a playmaker, and he's so fast, and then you watch him play, and they drop this perfect bomb right into his hands, and it falls off, and he drops it, and that's when you just the shoulders just slump down. It's like, oh man, you're killing me, dude. I'm gonna have to rely on the NFL and draft capital on Terry. I can't. I can see what's going to happen. He'll slip like into the 5th round because of that, and then I will end up taking him in the 3rd round of every single rookie draft I'm in, and I will have 10 shares of Tamarian Terry. So that's what I don't want to happen. I want him to get higher draft capital and for him to be in a chance to get more opportunity. But I think your concern is the valid one, and that's what people are worried about. So hopefully he figures that out.
I'm sitting here listening to you talk, and literally everything you're saying is like what I'm thinking about in my head as I want to sit here and wait to rebut what you're going through. And I mean, coming into this year, I think I had Terry at wide receiver 4. And I mean, you look at his size, you see that he bulked up 15 pounds to 6'4", 220. It's like, oh my God, this guy runs a 4.3 at that size. And you just like drool at what he could be. Like that's almost DK Metcalf type size, speed combination. And then you watch him go out this year and he's just dropping balls left and right. And I know he had some off-field stuff, like personal things, not necessarily off-field concerns, that sort of affected his performance on the field this year. But I mean, what you had said, like he feels like a lock for 5th round draft capital. And that sucks because the odds on those guys making it in the NFL is so slim. But you look at his size and speed and what he did early in his career. I mean, as a freshman, a redshirt freshman, but he broke out. He was a star on a very poor Florida State team. And of all the guys ranked really below Terrace Marshall in this class, he is the one that I think it would not be shocking to see him blow up and become a star at the next level. But if he fizzled out and just was nothing, it would probably be even less surprising, which is why I have him down at 13, because I think the bust potential between a lack of projected draft capital and the inconsistent hands, I think those are concerns to the point where I don't feel comfortable ranking him higher. But man, if he hits, the upside is going to be tremendous. So I'm going to end up with Terry on every single one of my teams, like Skip mentioned, and he's probably not going to make it, and it's going to be a concern. But he's the type of risk reward player that I will always take a chance on just because of the upside.
Yeah, I think if you were writing an article on the wide receivers in the draft and you were categorizing them, when you got to the category of boom bust, there's just going to be a picture of Tamarian Terry right there. It's like he is the perfect definition of a boom bust guy in this draft.
I like it, guys. All right, I think we'll wrap up our discussion there today. I mean, there's so many names that are enticing, yeah, we could almost do another episode on the bottom 12, guys that probably will not make it, but who knows? The Senior Bowl will get a couple of these guys on people's radars as well. So, all right, we're going to wrap this up. Skip, you tell everybody where they can find you on Twitter and what you are working on right now.
Yep. My name's Skip Newton. I'm at SkipNewton31 on Twitter. Always open to have discussions or DM if you got questions. I am the co-host of the Devy Happy Hour. It's part of the Dynasty Happy Hour family of podcasts. So you just have to find Dynasty Happy Hour, and then we'll show up automatically on that feed. And then I cover the ACC from a Devy perspective for the NFLDraftBible.com. So really excited to be a part of that group as well.
Excellent. They've been doing some really good work lately. So, yeah, I've been NFL Draft Bible has quickly climbed up on the list of one of my sites that I like to frequent as well. So, Joseph, where can I find you on Twitter? What you working on, bud?
Yep. So I am on Twitter at jnamor24. I'm a senior writer over at dynastyleaguefootball.com. In the last couple of weeks, I published a Trevor Lawrence and a Devontae Smith draft profile. Not necessarily. I mean, everyone knows those guys, so you can go check out my stuff, see why I like them. Basically, same reasons why everyone else likes them, but dive into projected dynasty value and what I think of their fantasy outlooks going forward. And then going forward, I'm going to have a Terrace Marshall profile coming out in the next week or so. And then my big project that I am working on is a top 100 rookies article. So I was waiting on draft declarations and stuff to get my list of players finalized. That will be in the works over the next couple weeks. You can look for that probably early February on DLF.
Excellent, man. The top 100 is always one of my favorite things to read as well. So, all right, you can find me on Twitter at FFPeoplesChamp. Doing mostly film cut up at the Nerd with the Dynasty Nerds, and for the Devy Manual YouTube channel. Kind of quiet on that lately, though. I've been sidetracked with also rookie profiles for Dynasty Nerds. So, we all have stuff going on for, ironically, the three sites that I love the most. So, I think that's kind of cool. So, a good mix of guys we got here tonight. So, it was a pleasure to talk to you guys. I needed it. Sometimes my quarantine life, I need to geek out and talk to some guys about some football. So, all right, you can find this podcast on Twitter at Devy Manual, and we will talk to you guys next week. Excellent. Very good, guys. Very fun.
Awesome, man. Thanks for